I spent years convincing myself that fairy tale romance wasn't meant for black women like me. Too dark, too curvy, too ambitious. Then, one rainy night, a chance meeting with a billionaire changed everything. What happened next shocked everyone, especially me. Hey, beautiful people. Before I share how my life completely transformed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss my storytime videos. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued in love, this story is for you. Growing up, love looked nothing like me. I'd sit cross-legged in front of our old TV set, watching romance movies where the girl always got the guy. But that girl was never black, never had hair like mine, never had a body like mine. The few black couples I saw were either background characters or depicted as struggling. My mom raised me alone after Dad left, so even at home, lasting love felt like someone else's reality. By 13, I had already memorized the unwritten rules. Pretty meant straight hair, delicate features, and skin that wasn't as dark as mine. I'd stare into my bedroom mirror and wonder which parts of me needed fixing first. My wide nose, my full lips, the deep brown skin that my grandmother told me was beautiful, even when the world suggested otherwise. High school dating was a brutal education. I still remember Tyler, my first real crush, telling his friends he'd never date a black girl loud enough for me to hear while standing just 3 lockers away. I pretended not to notice, but something inside me dimmed that day. College wasn't much better. The guys who did approach me often came with fetishizing comments disguised as compliments. "You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl." I've never been with a black girl before, each interaction leaving me feeling more like an experience than a person. I threw myself into my studies, and later my career. Numbers made sense, marketing strategies made sense. Balance sheets never told me I was too much or not enough. By 28, I was the youngest marketing director at my firm, the only black woman in senior leadership. My LinkedIn profile sparkled with achievements, while my dating apps gathered digital dust. When colleagues asked about my love life, I'd joke about being married to the job, but truth was, I'd built walls so high I couldn't remember how to lower them. Success became my shield. Designer clothes, my 6-figure salary, my downtown condo, all evidence that I didn't need what I couldn't seem to find anyway. But sometimes, late at night, scrolling through wedding photos of old classmates or watching couples hold hands in coffee shops, a familiar ache would surface. I'd push it down, reminding myself that professional respect was more reliable than romance. I still remember the exact moment I decided to stop hoping. It was my best friend Kendra's wedding, and I was her maid of honor. During her father-daughter dance, I watched her dad whisper something that made her laugh through happy tears. Standing there in that dusty rose bridesmaid dress, I realized no one had ever loved me that way. Not a father, not a partner, and maybe no one would. I was 32, and something inside me just surrendered. I deleted every dating app on the cab ride home. The world doesn't make it easy for women who look like me to believe in fairy tales. Every magazine cover, every billboard, every world's most beautiful list sends the same message. Beauty has a specific look, and it isn't yours. Even when successful black women like me found love in the public eye, the comments would flood in, questioning if she was really black enough, or suggesting her partner had unusual tastes. After a while, you start to internalize it. You begin to believe that certain kinds of happiness have exceptions and exclusions in fine print. So, I built my life around things I could control. I redecorated my apartment, earned another certification, booked solo trips to countries where I couldn't speak the language. I convinced myself this was freedom, not having to consider another person's feelings or needs. If friends tried setting me up, I'd find reasons to cancel. Too busy with this new project became my standard excuse. The truth was, rejection hurts less when you're the one doing the rejecting first. My therapist called it preemptive defense. I called it being realistic. After all, the data didn't lie. Studies showed black women were the least desired group on dating apps, the least likely to marry. I had the statistics memorized like battle scars. When you're constantly being told, explicitly and implicitly, that you're not the standard of beauty or desirability, eventually you stop questioning it. You accept it as fact, like gravity or the changing of seasons. Looking back now, I realize how much energy it took to maintain that belief system, to constantly guard against hope, to interpret every interaction through a lens of inevitable disappointment. My sister once asked why I seemed angry all the time. I wasn't angry, I was exhausted from the constant vigilance of protecting myself from wanting something I'd decided I couldn't have. By my 35th birthday, I had it all figured out. I had a 5-year plan that included a potential promotion, investment properties, maybe even adopting a child on my own. Love was not on that list, not even as a footnote or an asterisk. I had made peace with my reality, or so I thought. The universe, however, had different plans. Plans that began unfolding that rainy Friday night in April when I reluctantly attended the charity gala that would change everything. The Metropolitan Arts Foundation gala wasn't even on my radar until my boss dropped the invitation on my desk. "We need representation," he said casually, as if this wasn't code for, "You're our diversity ticket." I wanted to say no. These events were always the same. Me in a room full of wealthy white people who either avoided eye contact or spoke to me with that particular tone reserved for when they're trying too hard to show they're comfortable around black people. But this client could double our agency's revenue, so I found myself shopping for a gown I didn't want to wear to an event I didn't want to attend. I chose black, elegant, classic, and frankly, a bit of armor. The dress hugged my curves in a way that made me feel powerful rather than exposed. I remember standing in my apartment, staring at my reflection, adding my grandmother's pearl earrings as a final touch. Just 3 hours, I told myself. Smile, network, then escape. Little did I know those 3 hours would stretch into a lifetime. The ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel dripped with wealth, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and floral arrangements taller than me. The moment I walked in, I felt the subtle shift in energy that I'd grown accustomed to. That momentary pause when I entered spaces not designed with me in mind. A quick scan confirmed what I already knew. I was the only black woman in attendance who wasn't serving drinks or checking coats. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing server and positioned myself near a massive ice sculpture, strategizing which potential clients to approach first. The art director from Goldman was there, looking bored by his wife's conversation. The CMO from that tech startup had brought his much younger girlfriend. Typical. I mentally rehearsed my elevator pitch while sipping champagne that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "You look like you're plotting an escape route." The voice came from behind me, rich and warm with a hint of amusement. I turned, ready with my practiced social smile, and nearly choked on my champagne. I recognized him immediately. James Westfield, tech billionaire, philanthropist, and according to Forbes, one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. His photos didn't do him justice. Tall with salt and pepper hair, despite being only in his early 40s, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, and a presence that somehow commanded attention without demanding it. "Actually," I responded after recovering, "I'm plotting world domination, but an escape route is my backup plan." The words slipped out before my professional filter could catch them. I immediately regretted the candor, until he laughed, a genuine laugh that seemed to start from somewhere deep. "I'd put my money on you succeeding at either," he said. "I'm James." "I know who you are," I replied, immediately wanting to kick myself for stating the obvious. "I mean, your company's sustainability initiative was featured in my agency's trend report last quarter. I'm Maya Thompson from Apex Marketing." He nodded thoughtfully. The campaign targeting Gen Z investors? That was impressive work. I blinked in surprise. That campaign was mine, but my name wasn't on any public materials. Before I could respond, a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes brushed past, bumping my arm. My drink splashed across the front of my dress and, horrifyingly, onto James's perfectly tailored tuxedo. Mortification doesn't begin to describe what I felt. Here was my chance to network with actual decision-makers, and instead, I was standing in a growing puddle of expensive champagne. I grabbed cocktail napkins from a nearby table, blotting at his jacket while apologizing profusely. "I'm so sorry. Send me the cleaning bill. Or just the bill for a new tuxedo. I'm sure this costs more than—" "It's just fabric," he interrupted gently, taking the napkin from my hand. His fingers brushed mine, warm and steady. "Though I think we both need fresh drinks." Instead of calling over a server, he led me to the bar himself. Not in a commanding way, but with a light touch at my elbow that somehow felt like a question rather than a directive. I followed, hyper-aware of the eyes tracking our movement across the room. "What brought you here tonight?" he asked once we had fresh glasses, steering us toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Work obligation," I admitted. "You?" "Family obligation. My mother is on the foundation board. I'd rather be in jeans working on my latest project, but she'd never forgive me if I skipped." He leaned in slightly, as if sharing a secret. Though the night has suddenly become much more interesting. I'd heard lines before, smooth talk from men who saw me as a challenge or an experience rather than a person. I was ready to deflect, to put up the usual shields, but something in his eyes made me pause. There was no performative quality to his interest, no self-congratulatory undertone of a wealthy man doing me a favor by talking to me. "So, what's this world domination plan?" he asked, and just like that, we were talking. Really talking. About my ambitions in the marketing world, his frustrations with how tech was addressing climate change, books we'd both read, places we wanted to travel. I found myself sharing thoughts I usually kept to myself, about how algorithms perpetuated beauty biases, about growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs. He listened in a way few people ever had, fully present, asking thoughtful questions, his eyes never drifting to check his phone or scan the room for someone more important. When I mentioned my brother's struggle to fund his community center in our old neighborhood, he asked specific questions about the programs, the challenges, the kids who benefited. Hours passed. The crowd thinned. Waitstaff began discreetly clearing tables. Only when my boss pointedly mentioned he was leaving did I realize we'd been talking in our little corner for nearly 3 hours. The entire event had passed in what felt like minutes. "I should go," I said reluctantly, suddenly aware of how close we were standing, how comfortable I'd become in his presence. "Can I call you?" he asked, direct yet somehow not presumptuous. My practiced defenses rose automatically. Men like him didn't seriously date women like me. This was just an interesting conversation at a boring event. Maybe a potential professional connection at best. "I'm sure you're very busy," I said, already reaching for my clutch. "I am," he agreed, "but I'd make time." There was something in his steady gaze that made my usual dismissals die on my lips. Instead, I heard myself saying, "My card is in here somewhere," fumbling through my purse with suddenly clumsy fingers. He took the card, glanced at it briefly, then tucked it carefully into his inside jacket pocket, not carelessly into a back pocket or onto a table where it would be forgotten. "I'll call you tomorrow, Maya Thompson from Apex Marketing." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and made my exit. In the Uber ride home, I scolded myself for reading too much into a pleasant conversation. He was being polite, networking, maybe even a little bored and looking for entertainment. Men like James Westfield dated supermodels and European aristocrats, not marketing directors from Brookhaven with trust issues and student loans. By the time I kicked off my heels in my apartment, I had convinced myself the interaction meant nothing. I would never hear from him again, and that was fine, expected even. I went to bed that night telling myself it was better this way, no disappointment if you expect nothing. But as I drifted off to sleep, his voice kept echoing in my mind. I'd make time. 3 simple words that somehow felt different from any promise I'd heard before. Monday morning arrived with a delivery that stopped the entire office in its tracks, a stunning arrangement of black orchids and white roses. My co-workers gathered around my desk as I nervously opened the small card. Conversations like ours are rare. Dinner this Friday. James. My assistant Alicia raised an eyebrow. James? As in James Westfield. The whispers started immediately. I told myself not to read too much into it. Rich men sent flowers. It was probably his assistant who ordered them anyway. When he called that afternoon, I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer on the final ring. I hope the flowers weren't too much, he said, his voice somehow both confident and hesitant. I wanted to make sure you remembered me. As if I could forget. We talked for 40 minutes, him in between meetings, me hiding in the supply closet for privacy. When he suggested dinner at Nobu, I suggested a small Ethiopian place in my neighborhood instead. Testing him. He didn't hesitate. I'd love that. My friends had opinions, of course. Keisha was suspicious. Men like that have agendas. Tasha was blunter. He's either fetishizing you or it's some PR stunt. Only my mom said something that stuck. Maybe he just sees you, baby. The night of our dinner, I changed outfits 7 times before settling on jeans and a silk blouse, refusing to look like I was trying too hard. He arrived 10 minutes early, no driver, no security, just him in a casual sweater that probably cost more than my rent. Inside the restaurant, he greeted the owner by name, though he'd never been there. He asked thoughtful questions about the food, the neighborhood, my life. No name-dropping, no checking his phone, just presence, authentic interest. Walking me home, he reached for my hand. I found myself letting him take it, his fingers warm against mine in the cool night air. At my door, he didn't press for more than a goodnight kiss. Gentle, questioning, respectful. I'd like to see you again, he said simply. Something inside me, that wall I'd built so carefully, began to crack, just a hairline fracture, but it was there. Okay, I whispered, terrified and exhilarated all at once. 3 months into dating James, reality crashed into our bubble. A gossip site published photos of us leaving a restaurant, hand in hand. The headline read, "Tech Billionaire's Exotic New Fling." I stared at my phone, stomach churning as I scrolled through comments speculating about what he saw in me and whether I was his diversity hire girlfriend. James called immediately. "I'm so sorry," he said, anger vibrating in his voice. "My team is handling it. But you can't erase the internet." By afternoon, my social media was flooded with messages, some supportive, many cruel, all invasive. My mother called, worried. "Baby, are you okay?" I wasn't sure how to answer. That night, curled on my couch, I voiced what had been haunting me since day one. Maybe this is too complicated. We come from different worlds. James sat beside me, our shoulders touching. "Do you want easy or do you want real?" he asked quietly. "Because I've had easy. I've never had real, not until you." The external scrutiny was just the beginning. A week later came the dinner at his parents' estate, a sprawling mansion with more bathrooms than my entire apartment building. His mother greeted me with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "James tells us you're in advertising," she said, making my career sound like a quaint hobby. Throughout dinner, I felt like an exhibit. His father asked about my people and whether I'd grown up in the city, his tone making clear what he really meant. James noticed my discomfort, squeezing my hand under the table, later confronting his parents in the kitchen, while I pretended not to overhear. Either respect her or don't expect to see much of me, he said firmly. In the car afterward, tears I'd been holding back finally escaped. This will always be our life, I whispered, being stared at, making people uncomfortable, fighting to belong in each other's worlds. James pulled over, turned to face me fully. Then we build our own world, he said with quiet determination. One where neither of us has to shrink. My friends had concerns too. Over brunch, Keisha voiced what they'd clearly been discussing without me. We're worried about the power imbalance. His net worth is literally 1 billion times yours. You think I don't know that? I snapped, defensive though the same fear kept me awake some nights. It came to a head during a charity gala, ironically similar to where we'd met. A board member's wife cornered me by the restrooms. You know this won't last, she said with false sympathy. Men like James eventually marry women like my daughter. She nodded toward a willowy blonde across the room. I found James, whispered I needed air. On the terrace, words poured out. Every insecurity, every doubt, every reason this couldn't work. I don't belong in your world, I concluded, voice breaking. Then my world doesn't deserve you, he replied simply. And frankly, it doesn't deserve me either. He took my hands. Do you know what I see when I look at you? Not someone who doesn't fit in my world. I see someone brave enough to create her own. That night forced conversations we'd been dancing around, about race, wealth, privilege, about the stares we got on the street, some curious, some hostile, about children and what it would mean to raise them in a world that would question their belonging from both sides. I can't promise it will be easy, James said as dawn broke over the city skyline, but I can promise you'll never face it alone. I'd spent my life preparing for rejection, building walls, expecting disappointment. Now faced with unwavering support, I had no defenses. The scariest part wasn't the outside world's judgment, it was allowing myself to believe in something I'd convinced myself wasn't meant for women like me. 2 weeks later, a prominent gossip account posted an exposé about my dating history. They'd somehow found an ex from college who claimed I'd always been after rich men. The lies stung, but what hurt more was seeing my family dragged into it, my single mother's financial struggles framed as some kind of moral failing. James wanted to sue. I wanted to hide. Instead, we did something braver. We spoke our truth. Not through publicists or press releases, but in a simple photo of us cooking dinner in my tiny kitchen. James wearing an apron, me laughing at something he said. The caption, "Home isn't a place. It's the person who sees all of you and stays anyway." That night, curled against him, I realized something profound. The world would always have opinions about us, but they were just that, opinions. They held power only if we gave it to them. For the first time in my life, I chose to believe in what I knew to be true over what I'd been told to expect. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, stroking my hair. "That I've spent my whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop," I answered honestly. "And maybe it's time to stop waiting and start living." His arms tightened around me. "I think that's the best idea you've ever had." And in that moment, despite all the challenges ahead, I chose to believe him. More importantly, I chose to believe in us. 1 year into our relationship, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. The transformation wasn't about James. It was about what loving him had taught me about myself. Standing in front of the mirror, before a gala where I would be speaking, not just attending, I admired my reflection, without criticism for the first time. My dark skin glowed in a vibrant red dress, my natural hair styled in an elaborate updo. No more hiding in black dresses, no more shrinking. James watched from the doorway, eyes filled with pride. "You look like you," he said simply. That night, I addressed a room of powerful people about increasing diversity in tech investments. As I spoke, I felt a certainty I'd never known before, not just in my words, but in my right to speak them. Later, a young black woman approached me, voice trembling. seeing you up there with him. It makes me believe different things are possible for me, too. Her words echoed what I'd learned. Representation matters, not just in media, but in love stories, too. My relationship with James had become something I never intended, a visible challenge to who gets the fairy tale. There were practical lessons, too. Learning to maintain my independence despite the wealth gap meant insisting on keeping my job, my apartment, my separate bank account. Partnership doesn't mean absorption, I told James when he suggested I move into his penthouse too soon. He respected my boundaries, understanding my need for spaces that were fully mine. The hardest lesson was unlearning the expectation of abandonment. When James got sick with pneumonia, I found myself preparing for him to push me away. Instead, he asked me to stay, vulnerable in ways powerful men rarely allow themselves to be. Witnessing his trust in me healed something deep inside. Most profoundly, I learned that love isn't about deserving. It's not earned through perfection or denied because of skin color or background. It simply exists where two people choose each other, day after day, despite a world that may not understand. "You've changed," my mother observed over Sunday dinner. "I've remembered," I corrected gently. "I've remembered who I was before the world told me what I couldn't have." This journey taught me that the stories we tell ourselves shape what we believe is possible. I almost missed out on an incredible connection because I'd convinced myself I wasn't the type of woman who got the fairy tale. Don't make the same mistake. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below, sharing a limiting belief you're ready to let go of. And remember to subscribe for more real talk about love, life, and breaking through the barriers we place on ourselves. Until next time, keep shining and keep believing in your own love story.